Hey everyone, bonjour. We are back from our European adventures and we have a little bit different of a setup today. So we're trying it out in a new room. So give us the feedback. Did you love it? Did you hate it? We're open to hear whatever feedback that you have. If you want to leave a comment, we're happy to make any adjustments necessary. Now that little disclaimer is out of the way, we are going to jump right into today's episode. If you've listened to the previous episode where we talked about our travel plans for Europe, how much we spent, where we were going, kind of how we planned the trip, we made a couple predictions about what we anticipated happening, things that we thought were going to be great, things we thought were going to be stressful. And this episode is just going to be doing a full recap of our Europe trip, starting in London, then going to Paris, then south of France. And we're going to talk about all the places along the way. Everything from seeing Taylor Russell to going to the hospital and all the little things in between. We are going to discuss in today's episode. So for starters, let's discuss all the places that we went and how we got there. We kind of talked about that in the first episode, so we'll just do a quick recap.
Yeah. So we started out, we left out of Raleigh-Durham, had a connecting flight in Detroit, had a little bit of a layover there, and then we started our long journey across the Atlantic Ocean. I guess it was probably an 8.5-hour flight. I think that's right.
Yep, and we left Raleigh at about 5 p.m. and then we had a 3-hour layover and then got delayed in Detroit. So we ended up having like a 5-hour layover there. But still, it would have technically been a red eye for us pretty much either way. So we ended up leaving there at like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. Some things that were really helpful on that flight for us is one, that it was like the middle of the night for us. So we kind of could try to sleep on the plane and wake up and be in a semi-normal time frame. To prep for that, we did bring eye masks on the plane so that they provide some for you, but they're not the best. So we brought like headphones, eye masks. We took little melatonin gummies that kind of helped us relax and just like fall asleep on the plane, because it's hard to sleep on like sitting up. We weren't first class or anything crazy like that. And that was really helpful. And then just a reminder, like when you're flying across time zones, it was early in the morning. So not even halfway through the flight, the sun was shining through people's windows. And there were people that chose to stay awake and talk the entire flight.
The whole time.
So literally barely took a breath. You would have thought they were related to me in that way. But we made the best of it. We kept our headphones in and we actually, both of us slept really well on the flight there, as well as you can, like sitting up straight for 9 hours. So when we landed in London, we really kind of hit the ground running. We had a 45-minute Uber drive from the airport to the hotel. Again, we're going to give a shout out to our travel agent, Becky, a million times in this, but the way that she timed out all of the landings and then like the amount of time it takes to get through the customs of the airport, the amount of times the Ubers took to get from the airport to our hotel, we hit our hotels like right at check-in time every single time. Like it was to a T. Like she knows her stuff when it comes to that. So we weren't like waiting around for check-ins like with a bunch of bags and stuff, which was great. But yeah, that Uber drive, as soon as we landed in London, was memorable, to say the least.
Oh, Johnny boy.
Nice Johnny. John. We loved him. I mean, we felt like we made an immediate best friend. As soon as we got off of the flight, Stuart had to call the Uber and he was having trouble finding us. And Stuart looked at me and he was like, I just got off the phone with the most delightful man I've ever talked to. And
Well, I was caught off guard by the British accent. I mean, he was just, hello, mate. Yes, I'm right around the corner. Just, I mean, I can't even imitate it, but I was just like.
Not doing him justice.
And he was just very nice. And we jumped in and he just was talking away and asking us, what we were doing and was giving us recommendations. And then he started talking a little bit about politics, and he knew more about the average American about American politics. He was like, oh,
Did you hear about that speech Biden gave yesterday?
The policy that Biden put in place in 2007. Like, do you even know the bill that he passed? I'm like, no. You're good. I don't know.
And that was kind of our first indication of one of the concepts that we actually want to bring back with us is 90% of the people that we met, and we met a lot of amazing people on this trip, 90% of the people that we met had a worldly knowledge. And that's just something that, maybe it's the things that we personally are consuming that are not giving us that same amount of like worldly knowledge, and we're not seeking that information out. But starting from John and, all the way to one of the last people that we met, Christoph, like they were telling us that from primary school, very early age, they learn about politics all over the world. They learn about, different states. I mean, we would tell people we were from North Carolina and they would go, oh yeah, the Wright brothers, like you're near like Greensboro. What? Like I couldn't tell you cities in Edinburgh. Like I have no idea. John, our Uber driver in London, was telling us like, oh yeah, that they haven't allowed us to vote for a prime minister in 4 years. And he was like, what do you guys think about that in America? I was like, I didn't know that. I don't know a lot of Americans that know that. And that could just be my ignorance, but I bet if I got together, like, 20 of my friends, like they wouldn't know either. And that might just, be because none of us are, worldly and paying attention to everything. But they said that they learned about it in school and it just sparked their interest, and they kept that interest throughout their lives, which I was very jealous of. Like that's something that I feel like we focused only on the United States in school and growing up. Like I only hear news about even my town, or just instead of everything that's going on in the world. So that was something that we definitely picked up on very quickly and kind of wanted to bring back with us, is having that more worldly knowledge. But
yep. And and he also liked movies and shows. So we definitely hit it off talking about our favorite movies and shows. And what was interesting to me is, I mean, he basically just said all the good movies are in America. Because I was like, what are some good British movies that I can watch? And I mean, he tried to name a few, but he was like, everything really comes out of the States.
It was like Notting Hill.
Yeah.
Or like, what? That movie was forever ago.
So, but then we ended the Uber ride. We arrived at the Sea Containers in London. Great hotel. It was right on the river. You could see everything from it. It was a really nice hotel. So that worked out great.
We were right next to the London Eye. We were like on the strip, right next to the London Eye. And then across from us, we had like Big Ben and the bridge. Like it was a really nice spot. Again, shout out to our travel agent. She really picked, I don't think that we had a single hotel that didn't kind of like blow us away. So great job. And then throughout London, we really just kind of explored. We had a couple things set up. If you were following me on TikTok, we posted several of the excursions that we went on. I think in London, the biggest one that we did was the T-bus tour.
Yeah. And that was like the next day. That was our first day event, was the T-bus.
So we got to ride on like a double-decker bus. We had like the bottom floor pretty much to ourselves. But there's like a table and you get to have like traditional English tea. So it had like the little savory sandwiches, and then at the top it had all these baked goods. And then they served you like hot tea and milk, which I fell in love with the tea. I've still been having tea every morning, switching from coffee ever since I've gotten back. I did like a caffeine detox the week before we left, or maybe like 2 weeks before we left. And I've stuck with it pretty much the whole time. I think I've had like 1 or 2 coffees while we were there. But that tea really was hitting the spot. I've been doing decaf, but it was delicious. Love some tea, honey, and milk now. I'm an English girl, but yeah, so that was one of the first excursions that we did in London. London was so spread out, but also very walkable, the areas that we were in. It was like a combination between Toronto and New York, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
Had all of the space and like cleanliness I think that Toronto had, but it had areas that had the character. Like right next to the London Eye, there's this huge like skateboarding scene, and there's these big vintage markets and book markets and stuff that are all like in the middle of the strip. It was very communal. Everywhere that we went in Europe was extremely communal. But that was something we noticed about London as well. And we just kind of wandered around and like got lost. We did some shopping. I saw a sign for the National Museum and no, the National Theater. And that was right next to the London Eye, right next to the Sea Containers where we were staying. And Taylor Russell was performing in the live play The Effect. And I had seen like some commercials about it. I actually watched her movie Waves that she's in with Alexa Demi on the plane ride in to London. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder why they have that sign here. And we went in and talked to the lady and she was like, oh yeah, like Taylor Russell's performing here. I was like, we've got to go see it. So we ended up getting tickets for that. That was Stuart's first play. Did you want to tell him about?
Yeah, it was really cool. So we went in and it was almost like not necessarily a 360 stage, but there was people on one side of the stage and people on the other side, but not on all four sides. And so you had, two different perspectives. And the seats we sat in, I didn't like the seats. Like the seats were uncomfortable. I was like, oh, I don't know how long I could sit in this seat. And they were really tight. I mean, you were right on the person on each side of you. But other than that, it was a great performance. Right when you get in there, they have the smoke machines and it gets all dark and they have the flashing lights and they had really good acting. I mean, I'm not sure the main actor,
Papa Pseudo.
Yeah, he was really good. And it was a good storyline, so I enjoyed it.
So I thought it was an incredible play. And this was Stuart's first. I've seen dozens, if not 100 plays, honestly. Like my parents used to take me to DPAC all the time. And I'm always blown away by live performances. Even seeing like a preacher perform live kind of blows me away because just having that ability to like capture an audience is incredible to me. They put on, I think it was like an hour and 45-minute live performance with 4 people on the stage. And the only props that they had, it wasn't like a changing set or anything glamorous. They had 2 chairs and a bucket, and the bucket had like 1 prop in it. It blew my mind. Like I was captivated the entire time and like listening. So I'll give you like a little rundown of the storyline and then we'll move past this part. But it was Taylor Russell and Papa Pseudo's 2 characters were in a drug trial, and they, the other 2 characters were the doctors that were monitoring this drug trial, and certain things started happening to them and they started to get feelings for each other, and they and the doctors couldn't decide if they were actually falling for each other or if it was a side effect of this drug. And that's why it was called The Effect. So hopefully they end up, maybe recording this. I think it ends October 7th. So if you happen to be in London between now and then, definitely get tickets for that. It was worth watching. But yeah, so that was like a fun, I think it was like our second night there. It was like a fun date night. We went to like a little dinner and saw the little pop-up market and then went to that show. And then we just kind of stumbled on home from there. The jet lag wasn't too bad. We were waking up at like 2 or 3 in the morning and then being up for like an hour or so and then trying to go back to sleep until 7. But that only lasted like 2 days maybe. And then we were over that.
Yep.
And then Stuart started getting a little bit sick the last couple days. Oh wait, no, before that we went to like a comedy club as well. And that was another live performance that I just love live performances so much.
Yeah, the comedy club was fun. It was called Top Secret Comedy Club, and we got a couple of tickets for that. And we walked up, and there was a line all the way out.
Well, there was a line of like 30 or 40 people in front of us, yeah. And we were like 30 minutes early. So we're like, oh, like I'm glad we got here 30 minutes early. By the time that they opened the doors, the line behind us had gone all the way down the street, wrapped back up, and gone back down the street again. Like it was I was like, how are they going to cram all these people in here?
It was a full house, and it was your usual basement comedy club, but every act was really good. They actually kind of clown, like they kind of called out
They talked about Americans.
Yeah, I mean, they did Donald Trump. They did a lot of American stuff. So we're definitely a topic there all the time. It sounds like with movies, with politics, with jokes, with they definitely keep up with the states and what's going on. But great comedy show. We had a blast doing that. We also did we did a museum, the British Museum. That's probably something we will cut out next time, because we did the museum in Paris too, and it just, I think we're coming to find that we're
not museum people.
Yeah, we're just not museum people.
I would love, and it's not that we're not history people, because we did tours where we just talked about the history of places. I am very claustrophobic. I do not like big crowds, because in my head, I'm like, one of these people is crazy.
And the British Museum was big crowds.
I mean, it was slam packed. And like another thing that you don't really think about, or I didn't think about before I went, is when you go to such a, like the Louvre or the British Museum, somewhere that is like very touristy, enclosed space, everybody that's visiting there is going to be at these locations. So you are surrounded by thousands of people, and it's almost like stimulation overload, because thousands of people around you, every single person is speaking a different language, a different dialect. They have different customs. Like, you know, for us, we're like holding the door open for people. That's just kind of like what we're taught. And then other people look at you like you're crazy. If you're walking towards something, some cultures, people just step in front of you because they wanted to see. I don't know if it's rudeness or if it's culture. I really don't know. But it was too much. And in Europe, there is not central functioning air conditioning like you think about in the United States. Like my grandmother, who was in a previous episode, gifted us these handheld fans, saved our lives. Every single person when we were in London was like, it has never been this hot here.
Yeah.
Like they're not equipped for the global warming crisis, honestly.
It was record heat waves.
It was record heat waves while we were there, and everyone was like, we've never seen it this hot. Like, I don't know how. And every single place that we went, people were freaking out about how hot it was, because they do not have the air conditioning to accommodate that amount of heat. So when you add the heat with the different cultures, with the different languages, with the combined space and too many people, I mean, we were in there for maybe 30 minutes. Yeah. Hated it.
So we'll skip the museum next time.
Yeah, we'll definitely be skipping it. So,
but yeah,
we did some good shopping there, though. Good shopping in London.
Good food, good shopping.
Very Americanized food, honestly.
One thing we did notice too is everyone just likes to drink. I feel like
everywhere we went in Europe,
everywhere we went, you know, that was something that everyone related to and did together was drink. So we did notice it was heavy alcohol consumption everywhere.
And like every night of the week, it would be like thousands of people sitting out in pubs, drinking, hanging out. I didn't see as many people smoking in London. Yeah. And then another thing that we noticed right away is like if you are walking down the strip and there were these chocolate covered strawberries that we loved, and we got probably like 3 servings of them. But near the London Eye, they were delicious. But if you're getting like takeaway food, there are like no plastic straws, no plastic forks. Everything is wooden. So you'll get like a wooden fork, you'll get like a piece of paper, and it's like you have to recycle it. They were very big on like recycling.
Electric cars.
Yeah, electric cars were electric compact cars. So John, our Uber driver, was telling us when we were driving in, he was like, oh yeah, we mentioned that to him. We were like, oh, everyone seems to be driving electric cars. We don't see any trucks here. He was like, yeah, you wouldn't see a truck here. Even with an electric car, if you're driving a certain distance, you get fined $30 a day. No, 30 pounds a day, which is more than $1, right?
No, it's a little less, I think.
Okay. But yeah, so you get charged like 30 pounds a day. And if you're not driving an electric vehicle or like a sustainable vehicle, it could be even higher.
Yep. I didn't see one single like Sierra pickup truck style. Or F-150. I did not see a single one in Europe.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like every car was like a small, compact.
I saw a Ford Ranger, and that was the biggest truck I saw there.
Yeah. I mean, the only trucks that you really saw were workers, like construction sites or something. You might see like one truck and everybody was there, or in it. But yeah, so that was another big difference is they were very like, they appeared to be very climate conscious. But then as we met people and talked to them, they were kind of saying that they have some of the issues that we have in the States where people are talking about it and they're making kind of changes or trying to push people. But then policy is still, don't want to get too political, but they were saying that their policy still didn't quite align with how strict they were being with other things, like charging them $30 a day to drive more than a couple of miles.
There was a lot of buts.
Yeah, they were like, yeah, we're doing okay, but we could do better at X, Y, and Z, just like we would say here. So that was another thing we noticed. And then by that point of the trip, Stuart was starting to not feel great. He had some stomach issues going on. And we'll get into that a little bit more later. But it started like our last day and a half of London. His stomach was just really hurting. Yeah. So
I had cold symptoms. I was coughing and sneezing. And then on top of that, I had no appetite whatsoever. I could not eat. I had these just cramps in my stomach. It was getting worse and worse towards the end of London.
He kept saying it was getting better, but us ladies, we know.
Well, each day you wake up, you're like, oh, actually, I feel a little better this morning. And then by midday, you do a lot of walking, and I was doubled over.
Yeah. And so by the end, I spent a day by myself. And he kind of slept like the whole last day that we were in London, just tried to rest before we went to Paris so that he would feel better, which ended up not happening. But he like slept that whole day or like tried to stay in bed and rest. And I went to the Tate Museum, which I really enjoyed. So that museum I really liked. I went early in the morning, so it was just me and like a handful of other people. As I was leaving, like an hour or so after I got there, it was getting pretty packed. But I went as soon as they opened on like a Sunday morning, and it was all like the Tate Museum is an art museum, and there was some video art, there was some sculptures, there was some paintings, and photography. That's just more my interest. I could stare at old artifacts all day and I can 100% get inspiration and stuff from stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I really like to see the photography and the sculptures and the video art. So I had a really good time in the Tate Museum. And then I just kind of shopped around and brought Stuart some food. And then the next morning we just got up and pretty much packed up and got on a train. It was a 2-hour train ride from London to Paris. When you get to the train station, it is a stressful experience. You're in there with thousands of people.
Yeah.
It feels like, the entire train.
It was more crowded in the airport.
Yeah. The entire train is crammed into essentially like the size of someone's living room and kitchen and maybe maybe their garage. But think about how big a train is, and everyone is crammed into this one space. There's obviously not enough chairs for everybody. People are like sitting and laying on their luggage. And then people are trying to get food. Like they only let in the people that are getting on that train at a time, but it's still not enough space. And so that was a little bit confusing. Just you do have to go through and like show them your passport and everything. It was a little bit time consuming, but once you got inside, it was fine. But they don't give you, there's not really signs posted or like a TV that says like this train is coming in 10 minutes. We realized later that the only people that they let into the room were the people that were getting on the next train.
Yep. But
the train ride was great. It was decent views. You could have Wi-Fi on the train, and it, was smooth sailing, honestly. And we get there, and I will say when we got there, the line to get like a cab or an Uber once we got to Paris was insane. It was probably a 3-hour wait. Easily. There was probably like 75 people in line to get an Uber from the train station into Paris. So we just walked. It was like 15 minutes to our hotel.
Yeah.
And we stayed in the 10th arrondissement, I think you say it, or district.
Yeah. And we looked at Google Maps. We're like, oh, we can make it there in 15 minutes. So we did have our luggage with us, but we got there. The hotel that we stayed at, I'm trying to pull it up now.
Millie Rose.
Millie Rose. It was really cool right when we walked in. I mean, most everyone in Paris could speak English, and especially people who were working at hotels or restaurants. So
there was like one person in each place that could.
Yeah, if they didn't have somebody, if the person you were speaking with couldn't, they would find the waiter or whoever that could speak English. But we had a really cool hotel. It was in like a neighborhood, so it really gave you the feel of being in Paris and living with the locals. We had a balcony that looked over the street, and you could just see everyone riding around on their bikes or walking around or saying hey to local businesses. It was very communal and very busy, but our balcony had a pretty cool little breakfast nook chair and table that we could sit out and eat breakfast at and watch everything going on each day. So we were definitely pleased. It was a small room at the hotel, but the balcony definitely made up for it. But yeah, it was a great location as well. I mean, Paris was very spread out, probably even more than London. We actually we use Ubers more there because I wasn't feeling well, but anytime we did walk, it was a long walk from where we were at our hotel, so it was definitely more spread out, having to use more Ubers.
So if you don't know Paris, like think of like a snail shell. So like the center of the snail shell is the first arrondissement or district. And that is where like the Louvre and like all of those touristy areas, the Eiffel Tower are in the first. And then as you spiral out, it's like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And like it just kind of keeps spiraling out these districts. And so think like we were at the 10th, and then the first is all the touristy things that we wanted to see. It would end up being like a 30-minute car ride or sometimes even longer because traffic was really, really bad in Paris.
Heavy traffic.
And the traffic probably wouldn't have been as bad. There are a ton of cyclists, but there's also a ton of these mopeds, and they have no regard for law.
They have no rules.
No,
they can do whatever they want.
Would drive on the wrong side of the road to cut in front of all the traffic, and then the people driving the cars would have to like slam on brakes. I mean, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. I couldn't have imagined if we had a rental car in Paris. I would have hated trying to drive in that because there was no rhyme or reason to what they were going to do, and people just kind of kept stopping to the moped's will. It was crazy.
Yeah. Well, the first activity we did in Paris, that after we went to bed that first night, the next day we did a boat tour. That was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool way to start out because we got to see all the touristy stuff from the river. We had our own little guide that talked the whole time, but he was very informative.
He was Polish.
Yeah, he was Polish. He told us all about the company and how far they've gotten with the company. But then he was very informative about all the buildings that they had. I mean, we went by the Eiffel Tower, went under a bunch of bridges. He was explaining different stories with different bridges, cathedrals, museums. Very informative. It was relaxing. It was just us. We had a bucket of champagne and Coca-Colas and waters and whatever you want on there.
Which we don't drink, so we drink apple juice.
Yeah. So that was really cool. Good way to kick it off. That probably lasted about an hour, I guess.
An hour and a half.
Yeah. And then we walked a little bit after that, and again, I was not feeling well, so we continuously had to go back to the hotel and rest. Yeah, we'd take a nap.
We spent 80% of our time in Paris in the room because Stuart needed to sleep.
Yeah.
And I started to get a little bit of a headache like one of the days, but it kind of came and went really quickly. I really don't know if I was dehydrated or what. But where we stayed, like honestly, being in the tent, it was really nice because we were kind of amongst the locals, so we could sit on that balcony and just kind of people watch and absorb. And you guys know that I'm like a fashionista girly. I love to see what people are wearing and get inspired. So it was really nice for me to be able to see what everyone was wearing to work and like We were really close to 2 schools. So kind of seeing how the school system worked, you would see like 5-year-old kids walking themselves to school, going into like a little bakery, grabbing a croissant or a baguette, and then like keep walking and going to school. That was where we really started noticing the majority of the culture shift was in Paris, or in France in general, just because we were really integrated in the local spots. Like there was times in south of France where we were definitely in touristy areas, but there we were really with the locals, and we ended up meeting Mona, the owner of Just Art, and we did a jewelry class with her. And before the jewelry class, we like sat and like broke bread with her and had a meal, and we were with her for like 5 hours. So we really talked about a lot. And she talked a lot about, again, that worldly education that starts at a really young age in Europe. And then she also talked about the schooling with like, maternity leave. Maternity leave was 2 years there, which was crazy. And then kids start school at like 2.5, so that mothers can go back to work and they don't really do daycare. And I just thought all of that was so fascinating. Just because it makes such a huge difference if you're having dual income coming into your house, if both of the adults are able to work and maintain the trajectory of their career, and you know that your kids are taken care of and in a safe place. She also talked to us about like healthcare, and that ended up being very important to us later on in the trip, which you'll hear about shortly. But yeah, we had the art class where we made jewelry, and in a couple of months we'll be able to show you guys the jewelry pieces that we made with her. That was an amazing experience, and we're so grateful that she cooked for us and opened her home up and her studio up to us, and that was a phenomenal experience. Beautiful studio, like would love to live in her studio. It was such a great location and such a quaint little spot. I mean, I just loved it. And you just go up these spiral stairs. It was really fun. And then another cultural thing that we started to notice in Paris, and it was just like a common thread, was dads with kids, which is crazy to say, but it was just crazy to see a dad in a grocery store alone with 3 very young children, and he's taking care of all of them, which it should be the norm here, but I just don't see that as often in our area. We also were out to eat, and a mom was talking and the baby started crying, and immediately the dad jumps up and grabs the baby and starts like walking around with the baby. I'm like, what? That's so nice. Like, I love that. Stuart, let all that just sink right in. You're just pick up all these habits. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then we tried to go to the Louvre.
Yeah, we tried. We sat in the wrong line for 30 minutes, and then we got in the right line and waited another 30 minutes, and we finally got in. We that one, like, it's huge. So it wasn't as crowded because it was just so big. I'm sure there was the same, or if not more, people in there, but it was huge. But both of us were just tired, and I was hurting, and we stayed in there maybe 20 minutes, and we're like, maybe museums just are not for us. So.
And it's hot in there. Yeah. Like, it was hot and overwhelming, and you're stressed out from waiting for so long. Yeah. And Stuart hadn't eaten at this point in like 2 days. Yeah.
And then I think it was either after that or we came back right there at the Louvre. What's the place with the hot chocolate?
Angelina's.
Yeah, we went to Angelina's. I didn't enjoy the hot chocolate because I couldn't. I literally would look at food and just be like, I don't want anything. But it looked delicious. It was delicious.
Yeah. And it had like croissant.
Yeah. I would recommend going to that place if you go in Paris.
Yeah, and just get there early. It was like there was one at the Louvre. We didn't go to the one at the Louvre. We went to one like maybe like a half a block away. But it was definitely worth the wait. It was a cool experience. It was a beautiful building. I did find out that I think they have one in New York as well, but it felt very Parisian. So I would go to the one in Paris if you can. It was delicious. And then at that point, the trip started taking a little bit of a downward turn because we're on like our last day of Paris. And at this point, Stuart hadn't eaten in like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And he woke up that morning, and that night we were kind of like calling telehealth or looking up the emergency services, and it was very confusing trying to figure out, like, here there's like tiers to it. You have like your primary care doctor, you have like an urgent care, then you have the emergency room, then you have like an ambulance, and it's like we couldn't figure out what the process was there. And so trying to contact people here, like with the 6 hour or 5 hours time difference, it was getting very complicated. And he started saying that his stomach and his back hurt, which was making me concerned. Like, does he have appendicitis? Like, is he just really dehydrated? Like, I was just getting nervous knowing that we were 8 days into like a 18-day trip. So we had 10 days to go. So we were just trying to decide what our next steps were. So we called telehealth. The first telehealth doctor hung up on us.
Teledoc, yeah.
He just hung up on us. So luckily another doctor called, because he was just like, I can't help you. You're out of the country. I'm ending the call, and click, hung up. And I was like, you're freaking kidding me. So luckily another doc called. And he did say, he was like, I can't treat you. I obviously can't prescribe you anything, but if you just want to tell me your symptoms and I can kind of give you some guidance, like I'm happy to do that. Which was extremely helpful.
Yeah.
He was like, if you're not able to keep food down, or, if you're not getting your appetite back by tomorrow with taking like Pepto-Bismol, I want somebody to lay hands on you, which was that's really all we needed to hear. Even though Stuart still go to the doctor that day.
He was helpful in just saying, you just need to get somebody to put their hands on you.
He was like, I'm honestly not worried about you because, he wasn't like throwing up or anything crazy, but he was like, the fact that you don't have any appetite, like, it's not normal. Yeah. Like, you need to be eating something.
So,
and we couldn't find Gatorade anywhere. They don't have Gatorade.
Yeah. So, I kept on saying, let's tough it out. Let's see if I'm better tomorrow. So we ended up jumping on the flight. And
30 minutes before the flight, Stuart was like, maybe we should look at flights to go home. I was like, our Uber is on the way to take.
I was struggling, but we made it.
Flights.
We ended up going to, we flew into Nice. Antibes.
Nice. I don't know.
We flew into Nice, and then we got a rental car. The rental car was kind of a pain because we had been traveling all day. We got there. We had to stand in a line for like 45 minutes to get a rental car. I mean, we had reservations.
And we paid for it and everything.
Yeah. So that was a little bit of pain, but we got in there. It was a little hectic at first getting on the roads.
A little.
Yeah. Well, the GP, they had a bunch of roundabouts, and the GPS I had, like, it was hard looking at the GPS and knowing, one of the 10 exits on the roundabout.
Yeah. The roundabouts had like 10 exits, and the signs of the exit numbers were like the size of an iPhone, like out in the distance. And you're looking and looking, and it's not like it's exit G. It's like exit D7096592 on like the size of an iPhone a mile ahead of you. And you're like, what in the world?
But I ended up getting used to it.
Yeah, we got the hang of it fast, or he did.
And we went to our hotel in Antibes, which wasn't far from Nice. And that was a lovely hotel. It was very nice, balcony, out to the water. The area we were in Antibes was right on the ocean. It was a really cool kind of village.
Like an art district.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to explain, but and it was cool. You see the ocean and you see the mountains in the same time.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah. So we got there and, started, going to restaurants, and I still couldn't eat. And was it the next day?
The very next morning, which was your birthday.
Yeah. So that night I said, look, we're going to the doctor.
We ordered pizza and a Coca-Cola, and he didn't eat. And I was like, 911.
I was like, tomorrow, whether I say because every morning I'd wake up like,
I'm better.
I think I'm feeling a little better. I think I'm coming around. And by the end of the day, I'd be
by like 10 a.m. He'd be like, all right, I'm about to die.
So I said, tomorrow when we wake up, we're going to the hospital, whether I feel good or not. So we did that. We got up. We went to I think it was a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
and we went to the local hospital. We
in Antibes,
yeah,
South France.
We walked into the hospital, and that looked normal.
It was decent. They didn't speak English, but she kind of was like, appointment, and we were like, no, we just need the emergency room, and that's when all hell broke loose.
Yeah, she said, oh, you just walk out this door and you go down a little ways, go down these stairs, and it'll be down there.
You're so nice at explaining things. Everybody in Europe, I'll say in France, because we didn't really have to ask for directions in London. Most of the people in France would go straight here, 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 you're there. And you're like, what? Like they horrible at giving directions, in my opinion, but continue.
But we got down there, and the emergency room looked like where you would get your oil changed.
The worst place that you would ever go and get your oil changed.
Yeah, it was
like
rough.
Rusted seats.
I'm like, is this where we go? So we're kind of walking slowly up to it, and right at the front door, there's a gurney with a homeless man passed out on it, like looking rough.
He was overdosing, like shaking and kicking and moaning, and I was like, oh.
And you couldn't get in the front door. You had to press a button. I pressed a button, and a guy came out talking French, and I had to let Shelby take over on the talking and the accent. But
Stuart, even if we're watching like a British TV show, he has to turn on the subtitles. He's like, I can't understand them. And so that was another thing, is our French was lackluster. Like he had been like doing the Duolingo and doing whatever. Did not help us. I mean, the best we could do is bonjour, bonsoir, merci. Like doing our best. Nobody in the hospital spoke English. And we were so close to Spain that if you weren't speaking French, you were speaking Spanish, which was kind of difficult for us. Yes, you can use Google Translator and stuff, which did you end up having to use Google Translator with them?
No. So I walked in. They wouldn't let Shelby in. Only I could walk in there. And he could say, certain words in English to me, but he brought me into this little room, and there was a female nurse there, and her English was a little better. I just went over everything with her, told her, and she seemed like she was understanding me. And they took all my information down, took my passport, did all that. And then they made me go wait in the waiting room. Waited there for a while, and this waiting room was like a waiting room that you'd be waiting in jail.
It was a very dilapidated. Yeah. You were down in like a basement, and it was a garage. Like there was like a huge garage door.
Yeah, it was like world.
A third world prison.
Yeah,
hospital.
And they took me back to a room finally, and this doctor came in, and she could just do a few words, and she was feeling around on my stomach, and Dad had me in a hospital gown. They took my blood, took some urine. And then she walked in, and she had a handful. She had 5 pills. She said, take these. I'm just like, okay, here goes nothing. Took those, and she pointed at my stomach. She said, virus. She said, exam over now. Prescription. She handed me a paper, and she said, bye. And literally just kind of pushed me out the door. I didn't sign anything, sign any papers, pay anything. I just kind of stumbled out, and literally 2 hours later, I felt 100%. So I was glad I went, but it was definitely an experience. It was a little stressful, just the condition of where I went and how nobody could speak English. But I'm glad I went. They gave me some medicine, felt better. For my birthday, and then Shelby surprised me. She took me to a resort. It was a little bit away from Antibes. Do you remember?
No, it was in Antibes. It was called Cap D Antibes.
Okay, so it was a little bit of it was probably a 5-10 minute drive, but it was a resort that resembled the White Lotus.
It was like a private. It was like a semi-private resort. It was for people that were staying at their hotel, which we found out was like $1,500 a night. Crazy. But you could rent like beach chairs and have like access to the restaurants and stuff by like paying a fee. If you rented the beach chairs, you could eat at the restaurants and stuff, for like the the seaside amenities. And so I rented us 2 beach chairs. They ended up being about like $50 a chair, which was well worth it in my opinion. Because you pretty much had like private access to the sea and you got to like sit in this beautiful location. They were coming up to you and bringing you drinks, and it was nice. It was a very nice way for him to come back to health. It was a very nice way for us to, the hustle and bustle of like London and Paris and all the travel and all the stress of him not feeling well. It was well worth being able to lay by the beach. Since we go to the beach so often, it felt like home.
Yeah.
To me.
Yep. And it was gorgeous. The water was crystal clear, a little chilly, but they come and bring you whatever you want. We walked up to the restaurant, had a wonderful lunch. So it turned out to be a good birthday, and I ate everything on my plate.
Yeah, it was like the first time he had an appetite in like 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
Which was really nice. And then surprised him with their in-house made ice cream. He ate all of that. He loved that too.
Yeah.
So just what I would have to say about that is, one, just if you get offered travel insurance, I would definitely take that. That was a big peace of mind. One, knowing that if we were in Paris and 8 days into an 8-day trip, we had to cancel, our travel insurance would have covered everything. Yeah. It would have covered the rental car that we didn't get, the flight that we didn't take, the flight that we needed to get to come back home. Like, we would have been covered. And yes, the stress of having to rebook a trip like this with work is one problem, but at least you know that you didn't lose all of your investment.
Yeah. And that's really what made me question, hey, should we just go home? Because I knew like we could get pretty much all our money back.
Yeah. As bad as he was feeling, like to sit in the room the whole time wouldn't have been worth it.
Yeah. But I'm glad we pressed on. I'm glad we went to the doctor, and from then on, we were able to enjoy every minute and every activity.
Like 100%.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say that we learned about that experience is the healthcare there. It is very person centered. It is not like finance centered or insurance centered or anything. Again, like, not to get too crazy political, but that was one thing that we just were so grateful for. They just took such good care of us. And I really liked that the doctor's main focus was caring for the patient. Like, that woman had nothing to do with like the billing. Like, they took all of his information down, and the billing that we pay for like through our travel insurance will come later. But her main goal was making sure that he felt better and like keeping him safe, which was amazing. We went to the pharmacy and he had to pick up a couple prescriptions, and it was $9.
Yeah.
Which was incredible. I mean, in the States, that would have been a couple hundred probably.
Yeah.
And then we ended up meeting friends later on that said that was their number one fear of coming to the States, is being like turned away. And if there's like an emergency like that, like not having in-state health insurance. And I was like, oh, I haven't even ever considered that. So it was just really nice to be able to go there and be taken care of and feel safe and healthy, and all of that being taken care of. Yeah. So get the insurance. It gives you the peace of mind, but also don't be scared to like go to the doctor if you have to. 100%. We wish we would have gone earlier.
Yeah. But after that, the next day we did a food tour, and that was just in time for my appetite to come back. We had a lovely lady, Nadia, who was our tour guide. And
Nice Food and Wine Tours. I've tagged her multiple times on my Instagram. Cannot rave about her enough. She was incredible. She's from South Africa and moved to Nice and has been there doing tours and learning about the history. And it was just a great combination of learning about the history and her pointing out little aspects that we probably wouldn't have noticed on our own, like the sides of the buildings, all the windows were painted on instead of them being real because they look real. Like, it was like, she just like pointed out little things. And like, first thing in the morning, she was like, this is a traditional Nisian. Is that what she said? Is that what she kept calling them?
Nah, I'm not sure.
Like, this is a traditional breakfast from Nice, and would give us this like rose water biscuit, and we just got to try things. And we were in a group of about 8 to 10 people. And you're with these people for like 4 or 5 hours. So you get to know them. We had some people from Texas and from Minnesota. We had some people from Russia. We had some people from Wales. We had some people from Africa. just like a really good group of people that we were walking around with that we just were able to talk with and connect with throughout the day. And then just go to like a Nice market and see the things that they shop for, try like fresh fruits and vegetables. And she knew like the owners of all of these stores that we were kind of going into and meeting these store owners that were telling us about their specialties and stuff. It was really cool.
Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. And I enjoyed Nice. Nice is beautiful. So I would definitely recommend going to Nice and Antibes. So we did that tour. I think that was the last thing we did in that area.
No, we went to Ez.
Oh yeah. Ez was really cool. It was like a
We
mount.
like drove there from Nice right after the food tour. We were like, it's only 30 minutes. Let's just go up this mountain and see it.
That was beautiful. If you're in Nice, you should just run up to Ez.
We went to the Ez Gardens or something.
The Ez Gardens. It was beautiful. You go to the top of that, and that's an experience. So after we did that, we jumped in the car the next day, and it was about a 2-hour drive. We stopped in Cassis or Cassie. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but that was just a quick town I saw like on TikTok to stop in, and it was quaint and nice. But
it was like a Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah.
Every shop you went in was like a top was like $400.
Yeah. So we were there for 5 minutes, and then we jumped back in the car.
We got some apples and we dipped.
Yeah. We got back in the car and we went to our final destination, which was Marseille. Marseille was different, is what I can say. It was a South France town or city. It's a city. It was huge, but it was almost like an Asheville, North Carolina vibe.
Gosh, for a second I was like, I can't remember Marseille, but then now I do.
And when I say that, is you can tell people
very artistic.
Yeah, they have views. It's
eclectic.
It's eclectic. It's a big range of people. It's a melting pot.
Yeah, in a big range of finance. Like you would see people that were obviously wealthy, and then you would see people that were like college students, like walking around in this same town, which is what makes us think of Asheville.
Yeah, and it was historical. Historical buildings, monuments, but graffiti everywhere at the same time.
Yeah.
The
Pope was coming there like the next day too that we were there,
and you could tell there was bad sections of the town, there was good sections, and then right when you pull up to the heart of Marseille, it's like 2,000 sailboats.
Yeah, right in the middle.
That was
crammed in there. I don't know how any of them would get out, but
the hotel we had there was the nicest, and it was
the C2 hotel.
Yes, that was awesome. We normally would say we wouldn't splurge on a hotel because we like going out and experiencing stuff. But after being in several hotels that were
kind of blows away
10 by 10, and just the bed, we got this big
with like a living room, like a little sitting room,
vaulted ceilings, and
it was an abandoned mansion.
And let me tell you something else about this hotel. We would leave for like 15 minutes to go to the store, and we would come back and the bed would be made.
And there'd be candy. It was like the bed was made, there was candy and biscuit.
And it's
we're like, what?
Do they know when we leave?
They had to have.
This was like the third time they had made up our room for the day.
In one day. Yeah. Like we would go walk around. That was also very spaced out and a lot of hills. Oh my gosh. Stairmaster. You need to be trying out that Stairmaster before you go to Marseille. But we would walk around, and it was very hot there too. So we were walking around, we'd get hot, we'd take a shower, we'd like lay down for like 20 minutes deciding where we'd want to go, and like not even really get underneath the covers, just like there was creases on the bed where we had been like sitting on it, and leave, and then we'd come back, it had been like refluffed, the pillows were straight, and there's 2 little pieces of candy. I was like, I could get used to this. But it was crazy. And they also had a amazing spa area, like a pool and a spa that we could like go down to. And yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah. And the service there was just amazing as well. I mean, they were just very accommodating, whatever you wanted. The breakfast,
Oh yeah. So when we had breakfast there, it was like a full breakfast spread. And there was like a real like honeycomb that was like sitting on this thing, and you can get like honey. There was like a bartender that was making you a fresh latte or tea or chai or whatever you wanted, macchiatos. And even though we realized that that's something that people drink in the afternoon, anyways, it was lovely and the pool was beautiful. The person that like greeted us was amazing. I'm guessing that was like the hotel manager. He gave us a map and like circled areas that he highly recommended that we go to, and everyone was just very accommodating there. You could just tell it was like, what do you call it? White glove
Service.
like a white glove service. And that was nice for that to be like the last place that we stayed, like to get kind of spoiled and splurge a little bit on our very last day. Again, we have to give it up to our travel agent because we didn't book them. But yeah, she did it right. And like the last place that we stayed, you know, we wanted to kind of relax because the last thing you want is when you come back from a vacation to like feel like you need another vacation because you were like overly stressed or something. So that was really nice. We were there for a day, which was honestly, in my opinion, enough time there. Not to be rude, but like we could have probably gone and like done a ton of other stuff. But at that point in the trip, it's like I've seen a lot. And I don't know if I can like be running up and it was just so hilly. I would have needed like a bike. But then we drove like an hour to Arles, and we had our final excursion or tour of the trip with Eau Provence. And Eau Provence was the name of the tour group that we worked with. And I can't even say a tour group. We got a private tour with Christopher. And he was such a joy, so much so that the piece of artwork that we got from Marseille, we named it Christopher after him. So shout out to Eau Provence and Christopher. But he was lovely. Like he was very soft spoken. He was from London. And he really kind of tailored the tour along the way of the things that we were interested in. And again, just like Nadia's food tour, he didn't just show us like, look at this big building that you could have seen on any map. Look at this other big building. He really went into the nitty gritty where he took us into a building and he showed us this well, and the well had all of these deep grooves in it. And he was like, these grooves are from hundreds of years of people pulling a rope to pull water up this well. I would have never noticed that, and like didn't see anybody else stopping at that well. Like he took us down this little street that had just beautiful homes that he was like, this is like the most beautiful street of the city to me. We got to see where Van Gogh was painting and cut off his ear. Like it was just very, very cool.
Yeah, very good experience. That's something that I don't think me and Shelby would have booked without our agent.
No, I would have thought I would have hated. I was like a private tour where I have to like talk to somebody for 4 hours, like kill me. Like, no, I'm not at work doing a conference.
But we both enjoyed it. He, you know, I've never done a private tour either, and just him walking around with us and just talking like a casual friend.
Yeah, just like hanging out with a friend in the afternoon
and just discussing the architecture, the history. I mean, you know, he talked about things in America as well, and he was just like, you know, he's like, the history of America, they were nomads. They didn't make buildings like this. So he just had interesting conversations. And after that, he left us at lunch. We sat there and had a wonderful lunch. And yeah, that was a good end to an excursion. So we did that. We went back home. We had one more day in Marseille. What was the Notre Dame, or what was the building we went to that we went up the hill to?
Oh yeah, it was Notre Dame of something.
Yeah, that was kind of cool to walk up. But pretty much the last day we spent just walking around Marseille and soaking it all in before we leave. But great city to visit. I would definitely go back there again. It was interesting. Oh, also Christophe recommended an excellent restaurant for us to go to that night, and we went there, and it was probably the best restaurant we had.
It's probably the best meal I've ever had in my life.
Yeah,
honestly. And it was called Sepia or something.
Sepia, yeah.
And first of all, the location was incredible. It was on top of the hill in Marseille. So we went at night, obviously. And you could see like all of the lights of the city. It was like a part of the city that you couldn't really see anywhere else that we had been. And you just see like all of the lights like rolling down the hills. Like it was beautiful. And then it was a set menu. So it was one of those restaurants where you sit down and they give you have the choice between two things. So it's like for your appetizer, do you want fish or do you want soup? And then for your main, it's like, do you want beef or do you want fish? I think was another option. And then for your dessert, it was like, do you want this or this? It was one of those restaurants where we were like, he told us, he was like, get the cheapest wine and it'll be the best wine you've ever had. And we were like, okay, we don't really drink, but we'll try it our last day. So we got like an $8 white wine, delicious. Like it just slurped it down. And then after we tried this soup, it was plated beautifully. The staff was incredible. They were so kind, so polite, so accommodating. And the place was packed, but everyone was kind of soft-spoken and just really enjoying the ambiance and enjoying the experience. And they set down the first soup and it was like this little patty with like a little bit of drizzle. I was like, oh, this doesn't look like a soup in America. And it was like this potato-y thing with like this green it was the most delicious thing I'd ever had. And at that point, we were like, I would have never ordered this before, but it's delicious. And then they sent the second course and we like took 2 bites and we're like, all right, you obviously can't go wrong at this place because we both got like, what was it? The beef, the steak or something?
Yeah.
It was like steak and potatoes, or not really steak. It was like beef and potatoes or something. It was delicious. And then we got the dessert and I was like, we have to get one of each. We can't both get the same thing because we both got the same main, and we kind of regretted it because we were looking over at the tables beside us and they had gotten the fish and it looked amazing too. And we were just like, you can't go wrong. You could literally just say, just bring me whatever you feel like.
That's making me want to go back now.
And when we booked the place, we were thinking, gosh, this is going to be so expensive because it was $50 to book a table, like per person. So it was like you had to pay like 52 euros per person to book the table. And so we ended up getting there thinking that it was going to cost us so much more afterwards. And no, that was just the set price for the menu. Like you just paid $52 and then we just had to pay for our glass of wine. So that was an amazing experience. And we actually missed one other restaurant that I took Stuart for like another surprise birthday thing in Marseille as well. I'd heard about it. It was like this.
That was good.
This one was more of like Splendino's, but it was more of like a Instagrammable, very marketed, loud, eccentric, circus themed Italian restaurant that was rated very highly. And they specialized in like mushroom truffle dishes, mushroom truffle pizza, mushroom truffle pasta. And that was cool. Yeah. Like the cups were like, very interesting. The bathrooms look like mouths when you were like going to the bathroom. And then I had surprised Stuart and had like, when I made the reservation, asked them to sing him like another happy birthday. And so at the end of the meal, he was like, I'm so stuffed. Like I can't eat anymore. Let's go ahead and get the check and go. I was like, well, I might want to get dessert. And he's like, get dessert. And the guys are like looking at me. And then all these people rush up on him and start like singing happy birthday. They're like, I was like, oh, I love this. And so one final shocker, just sealing the birthday surprises.
It was perfect. But then we hit one final snafu of the whole vacation.
And it wasn't a tiny one, let me tell you. It was a big hang up.
So we had to the
travel home.
Yeah, the next morning we had to leave. We had to get up at 2:30. We had to leave the hotel at 3. So we get up, we check out, we get our car. That works out. That's fine. It's pouring rain. It's dark.
Monsooning. I mean, not pouring rain. We were drenched in rain.
So I couldn't hardly see the signs. But we made it to the airport. We get there. I say, stay right here. I got the umbrella. There's nobody at the rental place. I'm trying to translate signs, figure out what to do with the car. We finally find the lockbox on the side. I'm running.
And we hadn't slept at all.
Yeah.
It's 3 a.m.
I'm running around in the rain trying to get this. I get the keys in there. We walk into this. Marseille airport was a little dilapidated, but anyways, we figured all of the Marseille airport. We got to.
That place was crazy. It was like a ton of homeless people had like taken over the basement of this airport, and we were running around. We were like, where do we check in? Where do we get our passport checks? We were kind of freaking out.
Yeah.
And I looked at Stuart and I was like, we need to go upstairs. And this woman grabs us and was like, you speak English. She was like, where are we? And we were like, we have no idea. We had to like run across the whole airport and find this other terminal. Mm-hmm. And our flight was at 5 a.m. and it was already like 4. That was a little stressful, but we made it.
We figured that out. We got on the plane. We got to Paris.
3 hour later.
Paris was our connecting flight. We got there at 8:30. Our flight that left for Raleigh Durham was at 11:15. So we get on the plane, pretty big plane, everything's all good. You know how you're just kind of sitting there, and sometimes it takes a while to get moving and get the doors closed.
We had our show downloaded. We're watching our show, and
we realized like an hour's going by.
I was like, damn, we've been sitting here for an hour. I've watched 3 shows already, and we haven't gone yet. And there's no Wi-Fi, and it's kind of hot. It's getting a little stuffy in the plane.
Yeah. So...
But no one said anything.
It comes down to they finally found, they were like, there's a maintenance issue.
Like 2.5 hours in, they were like, there's a maintenance issue with the air conditioning.
So we're gonna bring on a maintenance crew. The maintenance crew comes on, another hour goes by. We see another hour goes by, and they're like, oh, the maintenance crew thinks they figured it out. Okay, the maintenance crew has figured it out. And
we had a group, they were like, we have to reach out to Atlanta to see if they can figure it out. And let me just say this with all the love in my heart, the group of people that were flying to Paris won't the group flying back to Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. These women were back there going, I mean, the least they can do is bring me Coca-Cola. And I was dying. I was like, oh my gosh. And then there was like 2 people on the plane that were like coughing every 10 seconds. And at the 3-hour mark where you're sitting in a parked plane in those tiny seats with no Wi-Fi, and it's a little hot in there because the air conditioning's not working, people start looking around. People are starting to go, all right, like, and there's no information being passed along to us. Like, we're sitting there in the dark. That was the most infuriating part, is like, we didn't know what was going on. So by hour 4, they're passing out water bottles, finally, within a non-air conditioned plane. They're passing out water bottles, and they're like, okay, we're going to take off now. Like, we've ran all of the numbers. We fixed the maintenance issue. We had to send it back to our hub in Atlanta, and they've approved flight of this plane. And everyone's like, woohoo, yay, let's leave. We've been sitting here for 4 hours, and we have 9 hours to sit on this plane. Like, that's crazy. We start driving. The plane starts driving. They're like, we're the 3rd plane to take off. We get to the end of the runway. We have driven the plane now to the end of the runway where the plane starts going real fast and shaking a little bit and taking off. And they go, we're sorry, folks. We just wanted to inform you that our pilot is actually going to time out mid-flight. So we're going to have to try. I mean, the whole plane erupts in pure frustration. So now, because it took 30 minutes for them to get down the freaking runway, it's the longest runway of all time. So now we've turned the plane back around. We get back into the parking spot, and people start ripping their bags out of the overhead bins, pissed, because every other flight to Raleigh Durham has now left. Like, there are no other options for us that day. And we would have been able to get on flights. Like, there were other flights that had, space like an hour, 2 hours ago, but we've been sitting on this plane for 4.5 hours at this point. So then they get a little snarky on the radio, and they're like, you need to put your bags back in the overhead bins because this flight hasn't even been canceled yet. And for all of those people that are calling and trying to book other flights, you can't book another flight while you're on a flight that's not canceled. We're trying to come up with a solution for you. What? Are you kidding me? They said, we think we're going to try to reroute this plane from Paris to JFK. Our pilot has enough hours to get you to JFK, which is an hour away from North Carolina. Like, are you kidding me? So they were like, we're trying to get approval to get this flight crew to JFK, and then we'll just swap out pilots, and then the new pilot will fly you from JFK to Raleigh. I said, oh my, this is never going to work out. Another 2 hours goes by. We have been sitting in the runway on this plane for 6 hours, not moving, with no information. They did pass us out chips at one point. If you could imagine the amount of frustration and uproar on this plane, even the flight crew was like, we've never seen anything like this. So we sat there for 6 hours with a water bottle and a bag of chips eventually after like 5 hours. And then they were like, put all your stuff back in the overhead bins. We're going to JFK. 45 minutes later, they were like, all right, we've got buses pulling around front where this plane is deboarding. Then they don't give us any more information after that. They're like, you need to go wait in a line and at the Delta Center, and they'll tell you what to do next. So Stuart and I like look at each other and we're like, we're going to book it. We get into the line. We're waiting. There's several people that are like, don't wait in this line. Just leave. It's a conspiracy. Like, they were being kind of crazy. So we wait in the line, and they're giving us one hotel voucher for the night to stay at a hotel that they picked, which I would have to equate it to like a Motel 6, right?
Yeah, like a Best Western.
Yeah, like something like that, which, I mean, it's okay, but I would rather have been in my own bed with my baby, but whatever. And they gave us a food voucher that is in this Best Western, and there's 2 restaurants in this Best Western. There's like an Irish pub and there's a sushi restaurant, and the voucher that they give us is only good for the sushi restaurant.
Like cowboy sushi.
Like, it's like, we heard people the next day that actually ate at that sushi restaurant. We did not. I'm just going to tell you right now, we did not eat there. And they said that they'd had better sushi at a gas station. And it's like, I was like, I can't risk getting sick. So it was about a 45-minute Uber back to like the heart of Paris. Just to give you context, like it's not like we were staying in like downtown Paris or anything. So we were like on the very outskirts, but we did happen to find that like right behind the hotel that we were staying at was like this quaint little neighborhood. And we just kind of walked around there and found this delightful little restaurant. We got lasagna, we had a beer, we had like a beautiful chocolate mousse dessert and tiramisu. I mean, it was delicious, honestly. Like, that meal kind of saved that day because we had that home cooked. They were like, it's freshly cooked this morning, lasagna. And then we were full and we went straight to sleep, and we just like conked out and like just couldn't do anymore. Because again, we'd gotten up at 2:00 in the morning, and we didn't get off of that plane to have to start figuring out our hotel plans and dinner plans until 5 p.m. So that was a long freaking day to not go anywhere, like to not even be where we were supposed to be, to know that we had to wake up the next morning and do it again. So the people at the desk, the last thing that they told us was, don't do anything. You don't need to book anything. You will automatically be booked on the exact same flight tomorrow. So an 11:15 flight, just be here to check in. And we were not allowed to take our luggage. We were also on an Air France flight. However, as soon as we started being like, there's an issue, like we want to complain, they were like, oh, it's Delta. This isn't Air France anymore. This is Delta, which was very confusing. I'm just going to throw that out there. But yeah, we went to the hotel. It was musty, dusty, and crusty, but it's fine. We slept. We woke up the next morning at like 8:00 in the morning, and we decided to just go. Oh, but let me jump back to the night before. We decided to take an Uber because nobody was giving us any direction. Even the person that we talked to at the desk, like, really was not trying to help us that much. They were like, this is your voucher. Bye. Come back in the morning. You're going to have a flight at the same time. And we were like, okay. So we just got an Uber to get to the hotel because we just wanted to take a shower. We've been sitting on a plane for 6 hours, not going anywhere. We just wanted to take a shower and eat and go to bed. When we finished taking a shower, each. We each took a shower. Then we went to dinner. We walked around this town and then got back to the hotel. The other passengers on that flight were just getting dropped off from the public transportation that this airport had provided, which was almost 3 hours after they made us deboard. It was crazy. Crazy. So they were just then getting checked into the hotel, getting a room, getting a shower, getting that crazy hotel sushi. I just felt terrible for them. So we went to bed, woke up the next morning, get back to the airport, and
they don't have our flight confirmation. They
looked at us like we had 3 freaking heads. Had no idea who we are. They're like, you're not flying today. Your flight was supposed to be yesterday.
Yeah, they're like, we don't have you here. And then they were like, well, I see the 11:15 flight, but that's full. We need to put you on the 1.
Yeah, they're like, you're not on that flight. And I was like hell I'm not. Yeah. Y'all told me yesterday that we would be on this same flight. We're supposed to be on this flight yesterday.
It was frustrating, but we saw some of the same people around us, and they were getting the same runaround. So it sounded like we happened
to be the first people from the flight that got to the airport. So they were having to figure it out with us. So
it sounded like they had created 2 flights to bring everybody back. So most of the people on our flight that we got on at 1 p.m. were on our flight. So we got on the plane. We got most of the same people on there. Actually, we saw the same stewardess and everything, and they kept on announcing over the intercom, after yesterday, thank you for being patient.
Yeah. And they were so nice. I felt terrible for the flight attendants, and they felt terrible for us. They were like, it's our job. So we're used to stuff like this. Like one of the flight attendants was like, I was supposed to be at my son's football game, in Apex, and I'm going to miss it. I mean, you'd feel bad for them. I mean, I couldn't imagine my work being like, oh yeah, I need you to work overtime, 24 hours overtime. I feel bad for them. Yeah. And I'm grateful for them because they treated us really well. They were really nice to everybody, and nobody got ugly on the flight. There was no passengers that were getting ugly. You could see some of them had that little twitch in their eye, they wanted to, but nobody did.
Yep. So we had a long flight. We made it home. When we got home, it was there was a tropical storm coming into the Carolinas, but yeah. we got home. We did have another little hiccup when we opened our luggage at home. Everything was wet, so we don't know if they left our luggage outside or what. But we had bought paintings in Europe, and
leather bag, vintage,
bunch of stuff we bought soaking wet. So hopefully we'll be compensated for some of that stuff. But yeah, that was the last hiccup. So we tell people that it was an adventure. We had some good, we had some bad. It was definitely worth the trip. It was fun. It was exciting. We learned lessons. I definitely would go back. I told Shelby,
I would move there.
I would move there too. I would move to South France. That was probably my favorite, is South France.
And London. I loved London too, just because they spoke English.
Yeah. London was nice too. So
I don't know about their taxes seemed a little high. It was 40%. But
that's that free. They were paying for me to go to the hospital.
They just had to help a brother out. Bull, before we finish, try to name everything that you watched on the plane. On all the plane rides, all 3, all 4, 5.
Oh, man. So much. There was so many hours of watching.
9 hours both ways, 2 hours to the south of France, 6 hours waiting. But just let's give the people what they want. They want to know what we're watching on that plane.
I watched a movie, I think it's called Siso, or it's like SISO. That was a pretty crazy movie. It was about this guy. It was he was running from Nazi tanks and stuff, and he was getting blown up, and he just wouldn't die.
So Lord, I didn't watch anything like that.
That's the type of movies I watch.
That's the only movie you watched in 9 hours? I was like, run us a list.
Oh.
I'll do mine first.
All right.
While you're thinking. So I downloaded The Simple Life with Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie. We love them. Which was actually extremely helpful because I downloaded that on the way back. So the 6 hours that we were stuck on the plane, I watched the whole season 1, which was so lighthearted and funny that it made me forget that I had been sitting stagnant for 6 hours. On the way there, I watched Waves, with Taylor Russell and Alexa Demi, which was really good, kind of shocking, like gave me goosebumps. I wasn't expecting it to go the way that it did, and I really liked that. And then I was listening to an audio book that I'll pull up right now. I also watched Chicago. I tried to watch Overboard. The Truth About Harry Kubert's Affair by Joel Dicker. I don't know if you guys can see that. That's the book. That's the book that I've been listening to, and I'm, 15. I have 15 hours left. I'm on chapter 6. It's good though. I like it. Some disclaimers. Just read the disclaimers before you listen to it. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I watched. I liked watching Chicago I hadn't seen that in years. Oh, and the best radio station that we listened to in the south of France was Jazz and Soul. Welcome to Jazz and Soul Radio. We loved it. We got to listen to all the classics. Okay, do you have your list?
I was trying to find my list. My mind has gone blank because I've watched so much. I watched American Graffiti. I watched a bunch of older movies. I watched a few things on the headrest. I was kind of disappointed. There just wasn't a lot of movies out that I wanted to see.
Yeah, it was all like oldies. Like I literally watched Chicago on the headrest because I couldn't find any like new movies.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just listened to podcasts, audiobooks.
What's that one movie we watched in the hotel with what's her name? We were like, interesting. Jennifer Lawrence.
What was it about?
Her dating some kid in high school. Do you have dementia?
My mind is going blank.
4 days ago. It was literally like Jennifer Lawrence, and the parents had like hired her to date their son who was a loser, and it was weird.
It wasn't that good. I can't remember the name of it.
It was weird.
Yeah. Wow.
2 out of 10. Stuart blocked out of his memory. Yeah. That's how.
It didn't have room in my brain, so I had to throw that one out.
Sad. J-Law is falling off.
Well, this has been a record long podcast here.
I mean, we were gone for a month. We had to give the people the breakdown.
A lot to recap.
So much more I could talk about.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to Shelby if you had any questions or if you want some recommendations, because I mean, we'll be honest and tell you what to do and what not to do.
I'm not shy to be like, I would not have done that again if you paid me, or I would pay big money to go back there right now.
Yeah, the
Tyrell's chips in London, I would pay big money to have a bag of them veggie crisps sitting right in front of me right now. Give you a little bit of ASMR. Or that dinner, that South of France 3 course potato soup beef dinner. It was so good. Best food. The hardest part has been coming back and every time I walk out of the room for 5 minutes, the bed's not made with a piece of candy on it and dishes are in the sink, and I'm like, who's gonna clean this? I just want to leave my dishes on the table and somebody take care of it. There's thousands of little things that like you don't tip, like if you tip, it's like not the norm. I mean, there was just so many little things that we weren't really expecting that took place, but 100% would have to say it was a trip of a lifetime. If you're ever able to save up the money to go to South of France or get an opportunity when you're young and in school to study there for a semester or learn a language like French or Spanish, I 100% say do it. Pay attention to those opportunities. If it's something that you can lump into your schooling, if you're younger, do, or if you're able to take your kids there for a work opportunity or something, do it. I think that it's well worth the experience.
100%.
And with that, we'll have to say ta-ta for now. Bonsoir, which means hello, but
au revoir.
Good. Au revoir. Merci. And we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.